Mr. President, I rise today to talk about how Congress can take action to provide relief to American families who are really feeling the pain at the pump due to high gas prices. Obviously, this is a very complex issue, requires a multi-pronged strategy to respond, but at the base of the price of gasoline, the base price of gasoline reflects the principles of supply and demand. Asian economies continue to boom, creating soaring demand for oil. At the same time, many oil-producing regions are curbing output. These factors can create a perfect storm that leads to historic high prices for the price of crude oil and the resulting prices at the pump that we see today. I believe we must find both short-term and long-term solutions to provide energy security for our nation and give relief to the unprecedented gas prices that we are experiencing today. Republicans and Democrats recently came together and passed a piece of legislation with my vote to suspend the filling of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve until the end of the year. This was an attempt to provide a short-term solution to high gas prices at the pump by dealing with the supply side of the issue, and it's a bill that passed with strong bipartisan support. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve has a capacity of 727 million barrels of oil and currently holds just over 700 million barrels. The U.S. had been filling this reserve to the tune of about 70 barrels per day. This was the right thing to do for several reasons. First, because we should not be buying the most expensive oil ever and simply by putting it in the ground. Secondly, because it will leave a little more oil on the market, which will hopefully alleviate prices somewhat. And third, because it shows that Congress recognizes that increasing the supply of oil on the market can have an impact on the price of oil. And finally, it sends a message to energy markets that Congress can take action and thereby reduce speculation, which certainly has been a participant in the rising price of oil. Congress also acted in a bipartisan manner to address a component of the long-term solution to energy security by enacting the Energy Independence and Security Act in December of last year. This legislation, again, with my support, was an attempt to provide a long-term solution to high gas prices by dealing with the demand side of the issue. This legislation contains an aggressive new renewable fuel standard that requires fuel producers to include a certain amount of alternative fuel in their product. I'm excited about the significant opportunity that this provides for Georgia, which has not been a large producer of biofuels in the past, to participate in the development of renewable fuel sources. The renewable fuel standard requires 36 billion gallons of renewable fuels in American motor fuels by 2022. I think it was the right thing to do to require 21 of the 36 billion gallons of renewable fuels to come from advanced biofuels. This means instead of corn-based ethanol, we'll be making fuel from cellulose, things like wood chips, peanut hulls, and switchgrass. This emphasis on biofuels is consistent with legislation that I introduced last year to increase the amount of advanced biofuels in gasoline. This is also very consistent with the Farm Bill that just passed this body. In the energy title in that Farm Bill, of which I was particularly excited about and remain excited, what we did was to induce the manufacture of additional amounts of ethanol in this country. But you know, production of ethanol has had unintended consequences because as a result of the 100 manufacturing facilities that we have in this country today that produce ethanol, all of which use corn as a resource for the production, we have seen the price of food products increase. And it hasn't just been corn-based food products. As a result of the high demand for corn, we've seen more corn planted, which means that demand for wheat, soybeans, peanuts, as well as other commodities has increased and driven the price up because farmers are simply planting more corn due to the high price, and it looks like it's going to be there, the demand is going to be there for a long time to come. So in this Farm Bill, what we did was to incentivize the production of ethanol not from corn, but from cellulosic-based products. Whether it's peanut hulls, whether it's switchgrass, whether it's pine trees, or who knows, in my part of the world, we have We have a vine called kudzu that grows rampant across Georgia, and there's not much use for it. One of these days we may even see a biodegradable product like kudzu be available for the manufacture of ethanol. It is a serious, serious problem, and in the Farm Bill we sought to address the additional production of ethanol through cellulosic-based products. Mr. President, I want to read a couple of pieces of correspondence that I have received from constituents of mine that further emphasizes the intensity of this problem, the seriousness of this problem, and the fact that all of a sudden families are simply not able to incorporate into their budget this huge increase in gasoline in such a short period of time. Deanna Payne of Winder, Georgia writes as follows: Senator Chambliss, due to the high cost of gas, I'm having to cut down on groceries and visit local food banks. My husband makes the same amount of money he did in 2007, but we just can't make ends meet. Gas prices have doubled the cost of some of the grocery items I used to purchase. I just can't do it. Please give us some relief. This is ridiculous. Americans are going hungry and losing everything. Another constituent from Augusta writes, I'm very concerned about rising gas prices and what, if anything, Congress plans to do to help Americans. I cannot afford to fill up my vehicle at these rates, which today are approaching $4. My husband is a platoon sergeant training troops at Fort Gordon. I work at the Medical College of Georgia. We have a combined income of over $70,000. It is becoming harder and harder to put any money aside. Not only is the cost of gas rising, but the cost to heat and cool our home and the cost of groceries are all making it difficult to make ends meet. My husband re-enlisted in September 2007, and we as a family came to the decision that even during this time of war, the Army was the only guarantee of a paycheck and health care coverage for the next few years. I hope that Congress is putting aside its partisan issues and working together to help all Americans, as I feel our nation will soon fall apart at the rate it is going now. A constituent from Montrose, Georgia writes, please work to help us with the prices of gas and its effects on every household's budget. We should be drilling anywhere and everywhere to alleviate this current situation. The brightest in this country need to be assembled and given the resources to come up with alternative energy sources. We need to have the nation go to a 4-day work week, starting with government agencies leading the way by example. These problems have been gradually getting worse all along with nothing getting done. Steps better be taken soon before this country gets into a position that it can't recover from. Thank you. From Douglasville, Georgia. I'm a single mother of 3. I had to take $20 out of my grocery money to pay for gas just to get to work. That's the only place I drive. The kids and I walk to our local stores if needed. This is not the American dream or the way we are supposed to live in the great United States. I can't afford a new car that is better on gas. I already drive a 4-cylinder. Something's got to give. Mr. President, I'm sure that the presiding officer has dozens and dozens of these same types of letters in his office, and it's a further indication of the fact that Americans truly are hurting at the gas pump. And it's imperative that we provide the leadership in Washington that reacts from a short-term standpoint, but more importantly, looks to the long-term solution to this problem. It's going to be very difficult to reduce gas prices in the short term. But I think that without question, if we implement today long-term policies, we will see an immediate reaction by oil-producing countries, and we will see an immediate effect on gas prices, and I think without question we'll see a lowering of those gas prices to a certain extent. But the important thing is that we've got to address the issue, and as I look around this body and see the rhetoric going back and forth on both sides of the aisle, I don't see solutions coming out. I see blame being placed. I see political statements being made, and I think, Mr. President, that it's time that we put those political statements aside, that we put partisan politics aside, and that we, sure enough, try to reach an accord for some common-sense solutions to a problem that's having a direct effect on constituents of Republicans and constituents of Democrats alike. And that it's time that we make sure that we address this problem for the long term, incorporate the multifaceted issues that are involved, and that we come together and make sure that we're doing the work that the people sent us here to do. I don't see that happening today, and that's what I'm hearing from my constituents back home. So I hope, Mr. President, as we move forward over the next several days before we adjourn for the July 4 week break, where we're all going to be back home and we're going to continue to hear these issues raised, that we can say, here's what we're prepared to do in a bipartisan way to solve this problem and to make sure that we don't continue to be dependent on foreign petroleum imports to the tune of 62% of our needs, that we're taking action to address that imbalance, and that we're taking action to implement measures to ensure that alternative fuels are explored for, that the research is put in place to provide those alternative fuels at the gas pump, which will help drive the price down, and that we're prepared to implement conservation measures and implore the American people to also think about that from the standpoint of the implementation of conservation measures. But if we don't do it ourselves, it's difficult for us to ask the American people to do it. So, Mr. President, I do hope that the leadership in this body on both sides of the aisle is listening to the American people and is cognizant of the fact that the people across America simply don't think we're doing anything, and that partisan politics is not allowing us to do anything, that we address that issue, that we find long-term solutions which will help in the short term as well as the long term, and that we see positive legislation coming forward from both sides of the aisle to address this problem immediately. With that, Mr. President, I would yield back, and I would suggest the absence of a quorum.